friends had been sending me a few links of some informative BBC archived short films, lasting anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes on Facebook. I thoroughly enjoyed watching them, so I started trying to find more and more, and soon realised that it wasn't simply a case of sitting down and enjoying continuous viewing, as at the end of each short film you have to go and search for another one. So I have put together some clips for each era, so that you can continuously enjoy them all on any device that you may be using, including of course the best way, on your large TV. I'm starting from 1948 and will finish in 1960, so there will be a few editions available. For those of you like me who enjoy a bit of nostalgia now and again, enjoy.
Mr. Cramp, why has there been this big invasion of birds?
Well, we think, as regards the tits, that there was an increase in population due to the very mild winter last year and a good breeding season last summer.
What have you learned so far from this survey?
Well, we've been watching the increase in this country from early as August, and we've seen the birds coming in over the coast of the observatories in September and onwards. And then after that, there's been this outbreak of attacks on milk bottles, tearing wallpaper, and so on, which has caused a lot of interest and some irritation to householders.
Well, if people left water in the garden, do you think that the tits would go for the water and not for the milk?
No, I don't think they would, because they want the cream in the milk bottles. That is a very desirable food from their point of view.
Are you suggesting then, Mr. Cramp, that the tit is sufficiently intelligent as to know that there is cream in the milk bottle?
I think they do realise that, and I think they can pick out the best cream on occasion by going for the Jersey milk bottle tops.
As you know, stereophonic sound requires two channels to represent the two ears. For my right ear, I am going to use the sound from a television receiver, but you could equally well use any ordinary sound receiver tuned to the third program. For my left ear, I am going to use a sound receiver tuned to the home service. I have set up the two receivers about 6 feet apart and pointing to the place where I'm going to sit, which is also about 6 feet from both receivers. You will see that the two receivers and myself form a triangle of roughly equal sides. Now, when the program begins tomorrow, there will be an introductory talk to enable you to adjust the volumes of the two receivers so that the sound appears to come from a point exactly midway between them. Don't worry unduly if you can't achieve this balance, because it probably means that the connections to one of the loudspeakers is the wrong way round. But the engineers at the BBC are going to reverse the connections to one of the channels halfway through the program, and then everything.
Good evening and welcome once again to another session of Jukebox Jerry. Right now to introduce the jury we have with us this session. It's a little different this week because we have two married couples on our jury. The first two are very famous Danish recording stars whose records are constantly in our hit parade, Nina and Frederick. We have another husband and wife team, actor and actress they are called, and they are called by name Jill Ireland and David McCallum. That's a fast way of getting over the opening, isn't it? Poetry in Motion, and we leave them up in the air on that one. Johnny Tillotson recorded that one. Nina, what do you think about it?
Well, I must say I rather like the beginning of it, what I call the dirty saxophone, and I think it had a very good beat, and unfortunately the lyrics were rather ununderstandable, but I think it had something. I would vote that a hit.
Frederick.
Well, returning to the beginning of this song, I hope that his baby has a nicer voice than that saxophone. I don't think I really like this song very much. I think it was the title promised more than the lyrics gave.
Jill Ireland, what did you think?
Well, I liked the smoky blue beginning. And then I got rather confused because I thought he said, she's like a tree in motion. And I couldn't understand that at all. But I think it would probably be a hit.
He'd been out on manoeuvres, I think, perhaps. David McCallum.
I'm afraid it's not my kind of record. I like an opening that has a form of gimmick, but I agree with Frederick that the saxophone is a little harsh, shall we say, but not my kind of record.
All right, well, Poetry in Motion we played by Johnny Tillotson. Do you make it a hit or a miss, Jerry? Well, they make it undoubtedly a hit.
There is a man in Wimbledon who will go on adding to his equipment until he can hear the sigh of the conductor as the piccolo misses its entry. Do they like music, or are they in love with equipment? Is it all for the love of a crossover unit? Is it a soft spot for a tweeter that holds these faces in thrall? Mesmerized by a feedback circuit. No bibliophile handles a rare binding more tenderly. But it's no good coming in if you don't speak the language.
Good morning. I have a 12-inch bass unit. I'd like to buy a Trebex tweeter, please.
Yes, sir, I have one in
Could I
stock
see
here.
one?
Yes, sir, there's a Trebex tweeter. That would cost £6.4. To go with that, of course, you'll need a crossover unit, which crosses over at 5,000 cycles and enables you to give the correct registers to the appropriate speaker.
Oh, well, of course, that is no good to you at all. You must have one of these better class units, which has ultralinear output stages. The distortion factor on it is very, very low indeed. Somewhere in the region of 1% at 10 watts output.
That will be £6.4, 2 guineas, £1.4 and 6, £1.3 and 6, which gives you £10.14 and 7 shillings, £11 1 shillings.
Worth every penny. Record shops have turned into glossy cathedrals. See how the assistants have become church wardens. To every worshipper, a stall. Then down past a mosaic of shining record covers to join the mysterious ritual.
My baby don't care for clothes.
Beautiful music.
With a dozen different recordings of every work, how do we find the best? Rely on the critic. Nothing escapes him.
Comparisons are odious, but inevitable. What are we to make of this version, for example, by Norki and the Albionia on BEP 709? The string tone is thin and boxy. There's faint background rumble, and the woodwind section seems strangely out of focus. John Terps, on the other hand, has given us a rather dapper account of the symphony on XZLP 4137. I fear the engineers have picked up a trifle too much resonance, so that fortissimos ring round the room, building up mush. But it's a glowing account of the symphony nonetheless, and very different from Norki's interpretation. The Würzburg Symphonica under Zeugmar make Beethoven's Call of Fate in a rather more tentative way on RB 21495Q. On this pressing there was a suspicion of pre-echo. The recording gets shrill and coarse at moments of tension, and Zeugmar makes a little too much play with his wind. But on balance, this is a splendidly alive and exciting performance.
What an ear. Is it a religion or a disease? An American psychiatrist calls it audiophilia. And now, stereo, three-dimensional sound, the biggest contribution to music since Barnum and Bailey. A quiet evening with friends. And the new equipment.
Hold it. Shh. Quiet.
This is stereo, three-dimensional reality. With stereo, an express train roars through your living room. Emergency! And with stereo, you are there. Or you can witness a thrilling game of ping pong. Yes, great music can ring in your ears as fresh and majestic as it rang in the mind of the composer at the moment of its creation.
A dream of perfection, of images larger than life. Of machines more sensitive than the ears they play to.
Of Bitterlies.
Certainly.
Which one do I draw from?
This one over here.
This is the best, is
That's only the best.
Looks all right.
Well, I should hope so. They all seem to appreciate it.
Cheers.
You're very welcome. The money?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. How did this idea start?
Well, it was rather an accident, really. The bar was moved from one position to another, and the pumps were left over the other side, and we decided to leave them there, and the public rather liked it.
They like doing it so much they're drinking more, are they?
Well, the odd wife comes in and who insists on buying her husband a drink because she's always wanted to be a barmaid, I think, early on in life, sort of thing.
You don't think this idea will ever replace the old-fashioned barmaid, do you?
Well, I hope nothing ever replaces the old-fashioned barmaid.
What about having a drink on us?
Well, it's very nice of you. Thank you very much. I'll have a pint. Do you mind?
Pint of bitter?
Yes, please.
Right. Not very expert at this.
Well, you'll learn. They all are taking lessons. I'll say you're not very expert. You're very good health.
Cheers.
Well, I think it's quite clearly obvious that they are utterly disgusting and must do, in fact, disgust any decent-minded people, as I know by having interviewed them and talked to them before and after this publication in the local paper.
Do you have to look into the windows? Couldn't you pass on?
There are 5 or 6 shops in town, in this Terminus Road, which is the main shopping centre of the town, where one does run shopping, and how can, if one's walking along the street and these things are stuck right in the middle, in front of the, right up just up against the glass, you can really not avoid them, unless you're going to stand and look the other way all the time, but you're looking in the shop windows.
Well, to whom do you feel that these are particularly harmful?
Oh, I think obviously the younger generation. And in this town, we've got a number of boys' schools and girls' schools, and of course the Eastbourne College as well. And I cannot believe that these displays can be anything else but harmful for them.
Do you think it's worse for young men or young women?
I think the young men probably make dirty jokes about them, and the young women are probably shocked.
Mm-hmm. Well, I understand you have already written more than once to the town clerk.
Yes, I have written no less than 3 times, and his 3 replies were to the effect that the council had no power to deal with the matter.
What more do you propose to do, sir, about this?
Well, I've done my bit, or said my piece. I don't think there's very much else I can do, but I'm hoping that, in view of the fact I've had numerous letters and telephone messages from people, not only residents in Eastbourne, emphatically endorsing my action, and I'm hoping that local opinion may ultimately put a stop to these unpleasant exhibitions and thereby remove a slur from the good name of this town.
Well, the time is just 10:58, and Britain's hovercraft is just about to reach the beach at Dover Harbour now. She's arrived, and she's come to a standstill on the beach. Some hundreds of people have converged here. When are we going to have the first commercial one?
Oh, I think it must be at least 2 years, and before it's generally used, it'll be more than that. It'll be between 5 and 10 years.
Well, Mr. Light, what's the principle of this? How does it work?
Well, the idea of this light is to give the pedestrian a chance, this particular part of the light.
Yeah.
The top section is on for 20 seconds, and then you have a V formation starting now. That runs down, or it should do on timing probably, for 10 seconds. Now, anybody wishing to cross the road now know they have roughly about 3 seconds to cross.
The traffic is stopped now, of course.
Yes, on the completion of that V, you change it over to green, which gives the traffic position of the road to run on.
Yeah. And they also know how long they've got before the red is coming on, once the V starts to go the other way.
This one is for the driver, naturally, when he's driving his car. As he approaches this light, he can see exactly now, or near enough, what time he's got left, which is about 3 to 4 seconds. Now to about 2 seconds. When he gets to the top, it could change over again to the red for the people who want to cross the road.
Isn't it going to be rather difficult to adapt the existing traffic lights to this new system?
No, I don't think so at all. It won't be expensive in any case. After all, it's controlled by a box on the side of the road, and on these vernier switches, which they use today, they're quite simple to adapt.
How long have you been working on this idea, Mr. Light?
Well, the idea I've had for about 3 years.
Here in Bristol, the new coin boxes are going into public telephone kiosks so that people can dial trunk calls as well as local calls. There are no push buttons, and when it's time to pay, a new sound comes on the line called the pay tone. There's also no slot for pennies, but a slot for threepenny bits, because you buy your telephone time in threepences. 1 threepence will give you a local call of 3 minutes, or a trunk call to, say, London or Edinburgh of 12 seconds. Now, I'm going to dial a trunk call, but I'm going to do it from the Bristol Central Exchange, because arrangements have been made there for you to listen in too.
This is Captain Bennett, Marshal of the City of London.
Good morning. This is the BBC in Bristol, calling you from one of the new coin boxes from which one can dial trunk calls.
Yes, I understand that.
Thank you very much indeed for your cooperation. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
They say worrying never did any good. And as far as the weather's concerned, that's absolutely true. I've been worrying about it now for 3 hours here in Sheffield, hoping to start on a story that just cannot be done in the rain. And look at it. But I've been wondering what kind of thing it is that other people here in the street have on their mind. I remember a year or two ago, my colleague Trevor Philpott asked this question of people in the Worcestershire country town of Upton-on-Severn and got some very surprising answers. Do these reputedly hard-headed people in this northern industrial city of Sheffield worry as much? And what kind of things do they have in their mind?
Well, I'm worried because I can't take my dog on the bus in Sheffield. It's the only town in Sheffield where, in the country where you can't take your little dog on the bus.
Well, I'm the comedian on the local operatic society.
What's worrying about that?
Well, people come in the shop and they expect me to be funny off the stage as well as on.
What is it that worries you?
Well, my holidays, where I'm going to go for my holidays.
Well, how do they worry you?
Well, I always have to go to Wales every year.
I can't see anything very worrying about having to go to Wales for a holiday.
Oh, well, it gets a bit boring if you're going every year.
I'm worried about all these roads, that they're big ones that they're building over the countryside. It is ruining the countryside. People are dashing about, faster than ever. They don't see the beauties.
But
they've been taken away.
A lot of demand for these roads, though, isn't there?
Yes, well, I think people who want to go from one place quickly, business executives to go from one place to another, they could surely go by air and leave the roads for we folks who like to see the country as we go along.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes?
What are you worried about?
Well, I wouldn't have any personal worries, though I'm a little bit concerned about things in the world.
What sort of things?
Well, what sort of things? I think that in the world today there's a lot of affluence. It's been 20 golden years, but in spite of all that material prosperity, I feel that things are still pretty bad in the way homes are broken up, juvenile delinquents, and prisons well filled. In spite of all the material advancement, there seems to be a definite lack. And I'm convinced in my heart that the reason for it is that men and women are leaving God out of the calculations. I think God should be in these things more. I do personally feel that there's been a great drift away from God, especially since the war. And I don't think that we can get rid of these things that are worrying people until they get back to God.
Well, it's just the butter situation. 5 shillings a pound. Why should it be?
What about you, sir?
Oh, the water.
What, you worried about the water?
Yes, it's raining now, but there's not enough of it.
Well, I just been complaining that there's so much of it here.
Well, it's going in the beer, I think, at the local. I don't think it's coming into the proper place.
No other worries, none. No. Because the education today is a washout to me.
Is it what?
A washout, the education.
Washout?
It is. There's too much money spent on it.
Well, don't you think it's
for what you get.
educated?
Well, it's very nice, but there's too much of it.
What harm do you think it's doing?
Well, it's not making men of them. You want to wait here a bit longer. You'll see them from the college come here, with hair down here, buy sandwiches, walk across into the pub with sandwiches in the hand.
Are you worried about that?
No, it doesn't worry me at all, no. But I think it's the limit.
Excuse me. Are you worried about anything in your life?
Yes, getting married.
What's worrying about that?
Well, I don't want to get too tied down.
What, are you getting married to each other, are you?
Yes, obviously.
Well, have you talked about it among yourselves, about this business of being tied down?
Yes,
a lot.
Yes. What conclusion have you come to?
Well, I mean, we want to travel and everything. I like to go abroad at least once a year, sort of thing. And well, I mean, if you have kids, sort of thing, well, you can't, not when they're young, sort of thing. So, and we've come to a conclusion about when we're going to have kids and everything.
Well, you agree with him, do you?
Yes, well, we don't want to lose the life we've been used to just yet, because I mean, we're young still, and want to make the most of it.
Well, worried about my bird when I'm up in Sheffield and birds down in London.
What sort of bird do you keep?
Oh, you know, my girlfriend.
Oh, your girlfriend?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. But why are you worried about her?
Oh, I don't know. Might be going out with someone else. You never know.
You know, does she worry about you in the same way?
Don't know, she might do.
Yeah. Has she got cause to worry about you?
Nah, not really. Think she can trust me.
Myself, I'm just worrying if I'm going to get a cold after all this. Good night.
Very, very cold day here in Hyde Park. And we haven't had any lunch. And we've been thrown out of various parks whilst filming for not having certificates by policemen. So you can see that the thing called comedy is the least uppermost in my mind. But in retrospect, you see, when you reconsider it all starts to take on a comic shape. Rather a cruel comic shape. And it is this cruel comic shape, in retrospect, which has haunted me since I was a little boy. And my whole outlook to comedy has been based upon tragedy, really. It's only that it never becomes comic until after the tragedy has occurred. I suppose today, Nelson, at the time of the Battle of Trafalgar, or Trafalgar, if you're Raymond Glendinning, you never think twice about doing a comedy sketch about Nelson's blind eye and his arm chopped off from Lady Hamilton. But if you'd been standing on the deck at the Battle of Trafalgar, it wouldn't have occurred to you for a second that anything was comic. But now, since then, I suppose Nelson's become a figure of ridicule. I mean, so you can't go to any satire in London without somebody doing a jolly joke about the Nelsons, the hat of Nelson being whitened by pigeons. There's a little verse I made up about that. What was it? "'Tis due to pigeons that alight on Nelson's hat, makes it white." That's the end of that bit. And the further you go back in history, it's easy just to laugh at these things, even though they're tragic tragedies from way past. So, what is the point of comedy? The point of comedy is the person who only really discovers it is the person who realizes it when it's happening at the very moment. He realizes that in this moment of tragedy, half an hour from now, lots of us will be laughing at it. But right now, the snobs won't laugh at it, but they will laugh at it later on when it's been rewritten by somebody else like me.
And when I'm not writing early goon shows, I'm writing early poetry, folks. And where do I go? Holland Park, all the way from Holland. I find a lot of inspiration in Holland Park. It's all done with mirrors.
Oh! What's this behind this tree, folks?
How's that for ham acting? Untrained, too.
What a bit of luck!
That's what I said.
The Silly Book of Verse for Kids by Spike Milligan. Let me see. Page 1. Oh. I'm not frightened of pussycats. They only eat up mice and rats. But a hippopotamus could eat the lot of us. And now for another one. Good heavens, here's another marked one. I've never felt finer, said the King of China, sitting down to dine. He fell down dead. He died, he did. It was only 9:30. Now, you can read this at 9:45 as well. It sounds the same. Here's the final one. What is a bongaloo, Daddy? A bongaloo sansenai is a tall bag of cheese plus a Chinaman's knees and the leg of a nanny goat's eye. How strange is a bongaloo, Daddy?
As strange, I replied. When the sun's in the west, it appears in the vest, sailing out with the noonday tide. What shape's the bungalow, Daddy? The shape, my son, I'll explain. It's tall round the nose, which continually grows in the general direction of Spain. That's China, Spain. Now then, are you sure there's a bungalow, Daddy? Am I sure, my son, said I? Why, I've seen it, not quite, on a dark, sunny night. Do you think that I tell you a lie? Bye, 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 Ford money. Yes, children, buy this book at once. Beat your parents until they do. The fact is that, warm or cold, I like writing poems for kids. Children mean a lot to me. Children I love very much. I get on with them much better than human beings. And one of the things that's been troubling me in the past few months of my life is what happens to children. They don't grow up into adults, they just literally vanish. They disappear from the face of the earth. So I decided to make some investigations into the reason why, and I discovered that the whole attitude towards children is pretty bloody, even by people who think they're kindly towards their own children. I noticed, for instance, that people whose minds have yet been unsullied by adult approach are very easy to get on with. I can always make them laugh, I can always make friends with them, but there comes the first glimmering of the adult in the child, or the adult influence, and you start to clown for them at Christmas, and they say, oh, don't be soppy, oh, don't be daft. And you realize then that the mother and father's influence of the child is that anything that's funny is don't be daft or soppy. That means to say the child has done something funny in the first place, and their mother and father have said, oh, don't be daft, don't be silly. Consequently, the child starts to grow up minus humor. Now, to me, the world is screaming out for people with a sense of humor. That was part of the human race, a complex creature, far from what I want, namely simplicity. I'd like to live a simple life. I don't suppose I can do it in the city. I'll try to get out to the country. Unfortunately, my office is in the city, but at least I can get out there weekends, I hope. I'd like to take my children out there and teach them what a horse feels like, which most children in the city don't even know. They know what it looks like, never felt a horse, know what a temperature is, what it smells like. And I'd like to teach them to believe in the simpler things of life, the nicest things in life. And not to be caught up in this miasma of social corruption which is going on today, which most of us are taking part in without even knowing it. And here comes an airplane, so goodbye. That's part of the corruption I was telling you about. I can't even talk now because when there's an airplane overhead, you don't speak.
Steel. This is a story of boom based on steel. Steel endlessly in demand, endlessly produced, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year without pause or cessation. And of a community and a small town, Scunthorpe in Lincolnshire, made by steel and boom. A third of the population of Scunthorpe, 20,000 out of 62,000, are directly employed in steel. Since the war, the population's increased by a quarter. Every year it swells by another 1,000 or more, drawn from all over the country by the promise of high wages and security for both skilled and unskilled. The average wage is around £15 a week. Some earn £40 a week. And it's easy to get spare time work if you want it. To the unemployed of Glasgow, it would seem like paradise. It's a town of material well-being, a busy, raw town with everywhere signs of expansion and change. Nothing must stand in the way of progress. The shops are crammed with things to buy. All tastes are catered for. Jobs chase men, and it's sometimes difficult to keep essential services going because of the pull of the steelworks.
We could take on 25 or 30 bus drivers tomorrow. The present staff are working a considerable amount of overtime and earning good wages. They're earning 15 or 16 pounds a week, but even so, that's not enough to attract the staff with the numbers we want.
The town itself can't build quickly enough to keep pace with its own expansion. The town hall's in an old bank building. The main branch of the public library and 2 shops in the high street. Municipal offices are scattered everywhere. With a civic theatre already built, Scunthorpe looks to a more elegant future. There's a fine old people's centre next door, and a complete civic centre is planned. And there's a vigorous youth centre with hundreds of youngsters busy on all manner of activities. So far, the town's main effort has gone to keeping pace with the housing demand. Since the war, it's built 5,500 houses and housed or rehoused 20,000 people, a third of its population. 1 out of every 3 of the houses in Scunthorpe is a council house, and new ones are still going up at the rate of 300 to 400 every year. This is a life that offers to most of the people you meet most of the things they seem to want.
And there's a bit more money about in the last few years, and that improves you a lot. It improves your outlook on life and the way you live. It's a lot better. You feel a lot better. You can go out and mix with people and feel that you're living the same as they're doing. Cars and fridges and things like that, they're not a luxury now, they're a necessity.
That's right, yes. Well, people have the money to do with what they want, haven't they? Yes.
In holidays now, you don't think, oh, you've got to go to the nearest seaside town. You can go further afield. You
just jump in the car and off.
Yes, you feel that you're like other people. You've got a bit more money in your pocket and you can do more things that you've always wanted to do.
We've got a council house and we're not doing too bad now, you know. I've managed to get a second-hand car. Well, we've got the telly and the fridge and the things that couldn't get them if I'd have been where I was.
I think it's a grand place. I came from away and I wouldn't want to live here anywhere else. I can go down High Street any day of the week, and I'm late for work on occasions because there's so many people to stop to talk to. There's plenty of money around too. Everybody seems reasonably well off, and the shift workers have all got their cars and they can toddle around out into the countryside for the day and still be back in time for work in the evening. And all around they seem a very friendly lot of people.
It's a town full of children. There are 4,000 under school age, 13,500 at school. It's built 15 new schools since the end of the war, 1 a year. And with 400 or 500 new pupils coming along each year, it needs them, and plenty of technical education too. A bright future based on a prosperous, secure industry. Here you might think is the face of the 60s at its best. But is it? Not everyone seems to think so.
They're not the neighbourliness that they used to be. Things happen before you know anything about them. I mean, for instance, my neighbour got a car and I didn't know anything about it until it arrived. Not that it's my business really, but it's just that type of thing. In the old days, you'd known probably weeks beforehand what was going to happen, you see. But that's just one instance of how things have happened.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because of the shift work mostly and long hours, I think. And strange, people seem to be strangers. A lot of people moved into town from outside and they're more or less concerned with their own business more than anything else. They've not grown up together.
Well, I just don't like the place, that's all. It's it's a heavy industrial town. The people are inhospitable and there's no cultural interest at all. There's nothing lively about it. It's just work and bed.
Do you agree with that?
It is all work and not a deal of play attached to the place, but the only entertainment there is self-made, the amateurs.
The people here, they seem, you know, sort of smug, self-satisfied. They go their own way sort of thing. They're too individualistic.
What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, there's a great lot of snob values here. There's a differential in the wages, and they're that great that you get this lack of comradeship. For instance, I worked 2 years down the Santon Mining Company. It's an underground ironstone mine about a quarter of a mile from here. I worked among the miners, and there was a good sense of comradeship. And all those miners were from out of towns like Nottingham, Durham. Yeah. There was a bond between them. Whereas on these steelworks, the steel worker is just wrapped up in himself.
At one of the biggest steelworks, I asked a man in charge of personnel problems how it looked to him, Mr. Gordon Westland.
Well, I don't think Scunthorpe really has settled down yet to be a community. That's the whole point of the place. People come here to work. They come from all over the country, and they never seem to settle down to form what you would call an established community or town.
Does that affect the younger ones, or is it only the older ones?
Oh yes, very much, because the youngsters mainly take their cues from their elders, and you find that when they come, they're always grumbling because there is a lack of amenities in the town that they're used to in the older established places. They earn big money here, do the youngsters as well, and their sole ambition seems to be to get motorcycles and things like that, so that they can go off in turn to the places they came from and the places that they remember. The same with the parents. The parents, as soon as a weekend comes or they're off shift, they like to go home to visit their own families and not stay in Scunthorpe to establish the community in the town.
Well, don't they do anything together in Scunthorpe?
Yes, they attend the football match, that's about all. They've earned the money and they've been able to do what they wanted to do, and that is purchase all these things that they think gives them a good standard of living. Their children, if you like, enjoy a very good home life, or they have all the amenities at home, but they're still not satisfied. They want something different, but what they want, no one seems to know.
They're just searching without any answer.
They're searching for something, but what, I couldn't tell you. They always say there's nothing to do, but if you pose this question to them and say, what do you want to do, what are you looking for, they say, well, I don't know, and they don't know.
What many are looking for, of course, is a drink. Steelworkers, so they say, stop for 2 or 3 pints on the way home and then go out for a serious evening's drinking, plus a floor show. But although they knock back a good deal in the course of the evening, convictions for drunkenness are low. Some take a rest in between, of course, and maybe the entertainment helps to keep them sober. It's raw and noisy and a bit brash, but it's companionable and there's plenty to drink and plenty of money to pay for it. And when they go back to the new houses on the pleasant housing estates, there are most of the gadgets most people want. And yet for a lot of people, it still doesn't seem to add up. They're still looking for something.
This is a bustling, busy town. You can almost feel it bursting all round at the seams as you go about. Everybody's got work, and there's good money for practically everybody. And most of them are spending it on the telly and a car and a fridge and a washing machine and all those sort of things. But I don't see you can blame them. Sometimes, I must say, as you go along, you begin to feel that you're going down a road on rubber tires to a dead end with all modern conveniences. In the old days, we used to feel that if people got leisure, then new horizons would open and so on. And it doesn't seem to be working out quite like that yet. But I believe it will in the end. I think we'll learn to manage prosperity.
For a writer, a place like Salford is worth its weight in gold. It's got everything that a writer could ever want. People who live here have a terrific vitality. You've only got to go down to the market to realise that. It's alive. The whole place is alive. There's people teeming into it all the time, buying and selling and haggling and quarrelling. I think it's a fabulous place, and the language is alive. It's virile, it lives and it breathes, and you know exactly where it's coming from, right out of the earth.
Satin centres, I'll put you a few of those in as well. Chocolate satin centres. Here, go on. Give me some Paradise fruit with soft centres, and there's some Paradise fruit. Number 4, there's your fruity chews. Put your those in there. Number 4. And number 5, there's your Super 7 salty caramels. Devon cream, rum and butter, egg and milk, molten milk, licorice and nugget. You've got the lot there. I'm going to put your those in as well. How do you like that lot, eh? That's a good lot, isn't it? Hey, I'm going to mix them all up like Grandma used to mix the Christmas pudding.
That's Mary and a clothes store. We always used to pass the market on our way to the pictures on a Saturday afternoon, and we'd buy 2 ounces of jelly babies or a toffee apple or whatever it was to take and suck at the pictures. And it's funny when you come to think that the people who are working on the markets now are the same people who were working on the markets then. He's been around for years and he always wears those earrings. This place is alive with kids. They're all over the place, wherever you go, sucking toffees and chewing gum and eating ice cream and chocolate and teeming like ants everywhere. But Salford isn't only alive, it's restless with all the coming and the going on the markets and the docks. But at the same time, somehow or other, it seems to be dying. But I don't think I could ever live away from England. Or perhaps Salford particularly, I don't know. It's a peculiar thing about Salford is that it's like a terrible drug, you know, that you really perhaps would want to get away from it, but you can't. I mean, a lot of people want to get away from Salford. And they can't for lots of different reasons, but for me it's always a question of coming back.